Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Pomona College Faculty Phonecast this evening. My name is Joel Hart. I'm one of the admissions officers here. I'm joined this evening by two of our fantastic and very distinguished faculty members. If at any time you have a question that you'd like to ask of them, you can just press 0, and you'll be connected into our question queue, if you will. But right now I'm going to allow our two very distinguished faculty members to introduce themselves.
Hi, this is Char Miller. I'm a professor in the Environmental Analysis Program. I'm an historian and have been at Pomona since 2007.
Hi, I'm Genevieve Lee. I'm in the music department, and I've been here since 1994, so that makes it my 19th year here. And I'm also a pianist, and I teach piano, and I teach theory and history courses, and I've also been chair of the department for 6 years.
Great. And again, at any point, if you have questions, just press 0. But I've asked both of our panelists here this evening to say just a little bit about, I think, sort of the value of the liberal arts experience and value of a Pomona education. I'll let just say Professor Miller, if you want to go first.
Sure. And I get to come to this question in a variety of ways, but first I should say that I'm a Claremont child myself. I went to Pitzer College, as did my wife. Our son went to Pomona College, and after Ben left, several years later, we returned to Claremont, where my wife and I had first met. So I have a deep affinity for and great affection for all of these campuses, and obviously since I'm teaching at Pomona, love this place dearly. And so in that regard, I'd be happy to chat with you about being a parent at a place like this. But I think where I should start is really to talk about what I think separates Pomona from many other places like it. And I can say this from the faculty's point of view in this way. The morale of the faculty of Pomona is extraordinarily high. If you visited campus, you at least have one clue as to why, because this is a remarkably beautiful campus and a beautiful community. That helps, but it also helps, I think, from the faculty's point of view to know, as Genevieve and my peers do across the campuses, that when we walk into our classrooms, seminar rooms, and whatever, practice rooms, that we are working with some of the most bright students in the United States who really read carefully, think thoughtfully, speak in ways that I am every day amazed by. And I have to say that my sense is that if I don't bring my A game to every single class, I'm going to get eaten alive by these very shrewd kids, which makes me a much better teacher, much more scared teacher, but a better one. And I think in many ways that's the kind of environment that I learn best in, have learned best in, and I think it's very clear that our students share that really crucial value of the liberal arts. And so if your students love working with faculty one-on-one in small environments and even in large lab courses, they will get extraordinary attention from my peers across this campus, and I think that makes for the most profound education that we can offer.
Hi, this is Genevieve, and I wanted to echo my colleague's comments. I think I agree with everything he's said, and the most important thing I think I wanted to emphasize is how much the faculty really care about our students. I mean, we spend a lot of time thinking about them, with them. Speaking for my own department, we are there, practically 24/7. I mean, the Thatcher Music Building, we're open late, and we are there every day, teaching every day, and concerts on the weekends, receptions after the concerts. We spend a lot of time getting to know our students. I mean, I get to see students one-on-one, so that's a little bit unusual, but I also, advise students. And I have to say, most of our music students are not music majors. So I get to see students from, all sorts of fun majors, and I pretty much know the pre-med curriculum like the back of my hand, because a lot of students do their major, but they're also interested in music and the arts, and that kind of discipline that I see in the students is just amazing. They really are able to do it all here at Pomona. And even if they don't do it all and they're not interested in everything, I think it's a place where students can also blossom, kind of find themselves, and the faculty really do our best to do everything we can to help them. And that includes because of the small classrooms, we're able to write the strong recommendations for whatever they're doing, post-graduation, whether that's a job, an internship, grad school, we know them well enough to be able to write these strong letters and use our connections, because we also are very well connected in our own fields. And even though we may not be helping necessarily a lot of music majors, we know the colleagues to contact when they need the help.
That's great. Again, if you have questions for our guests, please, you can just press 0. That'll let us know that you have a question. It works a bit like a radio call-in show, and that will alert us that you've got a question. But I'm going to throw them a question first here. One of the things that we get asked a lot, I know, on the road by parents and by students is sort of the ability, since it is a liberal arts college, to be able to do research as undergraduates. Can either of you speak perhaps to that?
Sure. This is Char Miller. I'd be happy to talk about that. And it's one of the things that I think sets aside really strong liberal arts programs is that students in the sciences, social sciences, and the humanities can very early on begin to do research with faculty. I'm hoping to do some this summer with a student on a book that I'm working, and that I hope to have her work with me side by side on some of the project development that I need to do this summer. That's as true in the humanities and the social sciences as it is in the sciences, where the lab tradition of student working with faculty is an old one, but it's pretty clear that Pomona in particular, because of the summer funding that it has available to it across the disciplines, is really encouraging students through what we call the summer undergraduate research program to really make this part of the culture of the campus, whether you're working with an English faculty member in art, in the environmental analysis in my field, in geology and chemistry and the like. The goal is really for all of our students to have at least one summer's worth of money to do this kind of work, because it really helps them understand not only the nature of the work, but also the potential for them in the future. And it may not be what they want to do, but at least they will have tried it out and have that kind of experience. And so I would say that although that's not the only thing that's taking place here, it's one of the real gems of the Pomona education, is you have this chance to do, as Genevieve just said, not only in music one-on-one, but in a lot of ways have that one-on-one. For those of you who love baseball, as I do, one of the things that always has struck me as a kind of metaphor for what I would like to be able to do as a teacher, and I hope I've been able to do so over the last 30-something years, is the relationship between a pitching coach and a pitcher. And when you see them on a mound or you see them in the bullpen, and there's this conversation across generations and sharing of knowledge, but also of the skills that then get passed on to the next generation. I think in a metaphorical way that might work really nicely, but I see it happening in labs. I see it happening in the music arena. I see it amongst my artist students as well as others across campus. So it's really it's kind of ennobling, and that seems silly to say, but that's how I feel every day when I walk onto this campus.
Great.
I just wanted to add, too, that we often think of research as happening only in the sciences, and what's nice about Pomona is it's encouraged all across the board, and I see it, happening in all the other humanities and the arts. And also students, not only do they get to assist faculty in research, but they have the chance to develop their own research agendas and come up with creative projects that they wouldn't have a chance to do elsewhere, I think, in a bigger place. And here, in addition to the SERP opportunities, we've had this Mellon Elemental Arts program that's been able to fund really cool projects for students in the arts, and it's a competitive thing, but there's been quite a bit of funding for that for, I think, over 4 summers.
Great. We actually have a couple of questions, it looks like, from some of the folks out there, so I'm going to call on you guys now to provide some of that. It looks like Michael from Mountain View, California, has a question. Michael, what is your question?
Well, Michael's my dad's name. My name is Anthony.
Hi, Anthony.
I'm really thrilled to be part of Pomona and its undergraduate experience, and I was wondering how would Pomona prepare me for the real world? Because I know it is a liberal arts education, and I know that one of the biggest reasons why I chose Pomona was definitely the student-faculty intimacy. So I was wondering, after my 4 years, how would I be able to enter the real world in terms of job opportunities and other things?
All right, fair enough. How will Pomona prepare you for the real world?
Well, let me jump into that, but I think Genevieve will also. let's start with the presumption that going to college is somehow stepping outside of the real world. It's not. The world around us is everywhere. You can't escape it, and much of what we do on this campus is through lectures and in other mechanisms, make sure that you are encountering people who are working on the most important issues that are confronting us, climate change and things like that, just to sort of toss out an example. And so you're never removed from that world or the thinking about that world. But the gist of your question is really how do we help you make sense of your own abilities, first of all, and then think about how those abilities can help you get a job, to be sure, and I would say that that's really one of the goals that we have, obviously, at least as the subtext. But a lot of that is to go back to something that Genevieve said a moment ago, which is that in helping you either work with faculty or develop your own innovative research on one hand or other kinds of skills, what we're helping you recognize is your own capacity to do work, your own ability to generate ideas and to work those out and see those through. And so every senior, for example, has to do a capstone experience of some kind or other, work that is a culmination to be sure, but it's also a way of helping you understand the skills that you have already achieved and how you can then use those for some kind of job work. For example, in the EA program, the Environmental Analysis program, in addition to a fall thesis, students are in a spring semester project-based work that has a real client with a real-world issue, and the students in that team have to resolve that issue over a 3 to 4 month period. So when they come out, they have already sort of done that. The other way of doing that we highly encourage at Pomona and support and incentivize are internships. And I've got students in their first year already doing internships this summer, some of which Pomona is paying for. There's a capacity to do internships during the semester. Again, Pomona pays your transportation into LA or wherever it may be. And the logic of that is really sound. The point of an internship is to get you outside in that real world, but really begin to see yourself in it. That is to say, put on the clothing, get a feel for whether this is work or an experience that you might want to pursue. And if it isn't, great. You know, a negative result is a result, and that's really important. So I think there's a lot of ways across the board, across the disciplines, that all of us are really helping you first to figure out what it is that turns you on, and secondly, to give you access to the world that will allow you to display those skills and also to obviously get work. I mean, I think it's a fluid process and it's a really dynamic one, but it's one that starts from the moment you step foot onto campus.
I would also add that I think that if you're really interested in getting a job right after school, it sounds like you're already practical minded and you're ready to take advantage of all the opportunities here at Pomona. And one thing about being in the small classroom too is that you're really held accountable. I mean, you're going to have to learn how to speak up in class, be articulate, and your faculty members will help you do that. There are opportunities with the Career Development Office. There are practice opportunities for interviews. It's a very proactive place, I think, on campus. And even though, we may talk about the liberal arts education in these very broad ways and these very idealistic ways, I think it really is true that being broad-minded, broadly educated is going to, make you stand out in the workplace. I think, most people do not have the opportunity to attend a place like this, and you will have the opportunity here to really become innovative and creative, and because that's, the world is changing really quickly around us, and you're going to have to, come up with, new ideas and be really, proactive and energetic about the ways you pursue things. And here you're able to do that.
Thank you. It looks like Caroline in Wayne, Pennsylvania, has a question for us. Caroline, what is your question?
Hi. I was just wondering what the sizes were of the typically larger intro classes to bio or chem were, and also what your med school acceptance rate is.
Great.
Thank you.
What do you want to speak to? Sort of intro science classes and.
They tend to be among the larger classes on campus, but that's a relative statement. At a large state university, you might be looking at 300 to 500 people in a class, and so for us, large is 50, maybe 35 to 50. But the way bio, for example, is taught is so highly interactive and so much driven by also the breakout groups in lab and the like, that what the lecture does and what happens in these integrative lab settings, you're not a number sitting in a room. The faculty will know you certainly by mid-semester, if not earlier than that. And as Genevieve said, you're going to have sort of requirements that actually compel you to be much more engaged than you might have been more passively in a much broader lecture setting, such as the University of California or Penn State, for example. The other piece that you're asking about med school acceptance is I don't know the number for that. I can only tell you anecdotally. I've never had a student who has not gotten in. And that's actually true for the last 5 years. I've been here 7 years, whatever it's been. And so that doesn't help you in terms of the numbers, and I don't know if Joel has those kind of figures. But the acceptance rate is pretty astonishing, and I think one of the reasons why it's so astonishing is because you have these very close relationships with faculty over 4 years who, as Genevieve said, when they sit down to write you a letter, they actually know you. And our letters run 2 to 3 pages single-spaced because we have a lot to say. And we understand that at the other end of that, the admissions committee in med school or the admissions committee for any graduate program, what they want to know is what do we know about you. In fact, we just had an information session this midday today with the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, which is one of the places many of our students like to go to. And what the head of admissions who was here visiting said, look, one of the things that makes Pomona unusual is the fact that the faculty, when they write the letter, can know exactly what these students are going to be like. And we read them rigorously because of that. I mean, it's a real clue to them. So I think that's one of the gifts that we give back to our students after the end of this 4-year close relationship is a strong letter that then gets read seriously because everybody at the other end who's received the letter knows exactly what we're talking about and the kind of school that this place is.
Excellent. Carla in New York has a question, I believe, for us. Carla, are you there?
Hi. My daughter's looking at both Pomona and Harvey Mudd. She's a math and science kid. And I'm curious about the difference in how the math or a physics class, for example, is taught at Pomona versus, for example, Harvey Mudd. If there's a different pedagogy, or if it's or not, I suppose. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Let me talk broadly about that because the program I'm in is actually a 5-college major, so I work with a lot of faculty at Harvey Mudd as well as all of the colleges. And I think one of the things that distinguishes, for example, physics across these campuses is the immediacy in which they take students and move them into laboratory work and working again one-on-one. And I would say that although Pomona is somewhat larger than Harvey Mudd, it also has a larger faculty, and so the class size at Pomona is smaller, in fact, than at Harvey Mudd, even though Harvey Mudd is a smaller campus than ours in terms of numbers. I think physicists and engineers and all of them are really interested in very hands-on instruction on the one hand because they think that pedagogically is the smartest way to go, and I think the data demonstrates that. But I think also because we have the resources at Pomona both to upgrade laboratories on a quite frequent basis, but we also have the resources to hire more faculty, and so biology and chemistry, for the size of school this place is, it's huge, which really redounds to the students' advantage because it means they have even closer relationships with a lot of faculty, which I think matters enormously when they work their way through those majors and work on their theses. They actually have a group of people who know them very closely and who have worked very closely with them from the moment they came onto campus.
Great. Let's see. I believe that Charles in Ann Arbor, Michigan has a question. Charles, are you there?
Hi. Thanks very much for doing this.
You're welcome.
The question that I had follows up on something you were talking about a little bit earlier, which is that there are a lot of opportunities for students to get involved with music, even if they're not a music major. And in addition to lessons, what are some of those opportunities? Could you talk about that?
Sure, I'd love to talk about that.
We have a softball question.
lessons, ensembles, classes. We offer a full curriculum. So if a student wants to major in music, we offer, all the classes that they need to get into grad school. But most of the students that we see are involved in the ensemble. So there's the choir. There are two choirs, a larger one and a smaller elite one. There's the orchestra. There's the band. And then there's also smaller chamber music groups that students often like to form on their own that get coachings from faculty regularly. And what we see is that I think over the course of the 4 years here, we see, I think, at least there are a third of the students are involved in music in some way on campus. So we have a huge, really, participation rate. And often, I shouldn't be surprised anymore, but when I sit there at class day and I look at the students who are getting the prizes, are people who are involved in music are often getting prizes in the other fields. So they're like good at everything. It's not fair.
Great. Let's see. And I'm trying to. Oh, here we go. Susan in North Hollywood. I believe you have a question. Hi, Susan.
Hi. I'm wondering about the academic workload at Pomona and whether or not it's not so intense that students can also participate in athletics and music. So I'm wondering if one or both of you can talk about students who have managed to do all three of those things successfully.
Let me jump in real quickly. This is Char Miller in the Environmental Analysis Program. It's striking to me the fluidity of our students and their capacity to move across what might have been perceived as boundaries, but they don't see it that way, and this is just the life that they lead. And so students who do art, who do environmental analysis and play soccer or lacrosse or football or whatever it is actually quite normal. I don't quite understand it, but a lot of our majors actually are soccer players, male and female. And they manage to be, because they have to, the demands on the academics are such that they're also highly disciplined and driven in a way that it doesn't seem to bother them, that they spend X number of hours on some field or other on a bus going to a game, and they're writing their papers along the way and sending me emails going, well, here's the draft. And I know they're out of town, and so I'm sort of puzzled, but intrigued that they're much more efficient than I am. And so I've had tons of students who are able to do this kind of time management on the one hand, which is what they're doing, but also because they have a deep love of music, of some artistic endeavor, but in an academic sense feel that politics or history or biology or something is the way they want to express their intellectual side, but it turns out they express their intellectual activities in a lot of other extracurricular settings as well. They're remarkably driven in some ways and deeply interdisciplinary in every sense of that word, and it's a thrill to teach them.
Yeah, I just want to say that there's definitely room in the schedule for students to, do well in their academic classes, do athletics and music. And I think with athletics and music, these students are, of course, already well disciplined, so they know how to balance that. And I think about, I can off the top of my head thinking about my own piano students. I have one student who's on the volleyball team. She plays piano. She performs regularly, solo. She plays chamber music. She's also a chemistry major. She's about to do research in Sweden this summer with a prominent scientist. Other students of mine who will sometimes balance athletics and music in a different way. They may take a half-hour lesson in the semester that they're running cross-country, and then in the other semester take hour lessons and play percussion in the band. So that's just one example, and still do really well in all their classes.
Wonderful. Again, as a reminder for anyone, if you have a question, just press 0 on your phone. But it looks like right now Yi Hong in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, has a question.
Hey, this is Yi Hong. I'm a mother of a prospective student. Actually, the whole family is coming next week. But I do have a few questions regarding the research. What is the difference between this undergraduate research program and the internship? And usually, in the field of social science, in particular maybe classics and foreign language, those ancient language. And does that happen just during the summer or throughout the school year?
Okay. Well, it happens actually at any time. We have particular summer monies that allow students to do research on campus or off campus and around the world, actually. We have Mellon Foundation money to help students, for example, to do research, and we've had a number of kids who've done so in Brazil, in Africa, and all sorts of places. And that obviously takes place during the summer. But during the year, the internship program is extraordinarily busy. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but there's no student that I've ever worked with that's not had an internship, which is a negative way of putting it. But every student I've worked with has had internships during the fall and/or spring semesters. That they work in Los Angeles, or they work in San Bernardino. They may work locally. They tend to sort of use this larger community of 17 million people. So this is a big metropolitan area. And work it to their great advantage, working for companies or working for startups, doing work for, we have a number of kids who work for movies in the movie industry, and it may not be the thing they want to do ultimately with their life, but it's kind of sexy and cool, and so why wouldn't you? And so I think that the research tends to be in the summer, but it's not exclusively so, because if you're working in a faculty member's lab or you're doing work with a classicist, for example, that can be ongoing throughout the semester as well. So there's no real time frame in this regard, although the monies tend to be much more prevalent during the summer for research and much more prevalent for internships during the school year.
Great. Let's see. It looks like Jessica in San Marino, California has a question. Jessica?
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
My daughter is interested in going to medical school after the undergraduate, and she's also a pianist. She has been playing piano for 12 years. So I would like to know for Pomona graduate, how common it is for students to graduate with a double major or major in biology and minor in music, or is it more realistic to just advise them to take, a few piano lessons and not expecting to minor in music? And also, if you want to take piano lesson with the faculty, is audition required?
Okay, so lots of questions. Let me kind of go backwards. For students wanting to take lessons with faculty members, usually there's no audition. There are a few instruments where we have more students than we can accommodate, and that happens in piano and guitar and sometimes with voice. But in every other instrument, we can accommodate just about every student who wants to play, even if you're a total beginner. For piano, we have what were called interviews, but they're not really auditions because we try to take a broad spectrum of students. And the medical school question, I certainly have a lot of students who go on to medical school, and sometimes they're double majors. I think it depends on the student. I think if they have a real passion for two subjects, then I would encourage them to double major or perhaps do a major and a minor. Some students, I think, if they fill up their schedules with two majors, it becomes a little bit restrictive. They're not able to explore as much throughout the curriculum. And sometimes I say, well, do you really need to have a minor on your record? Not necessarily. You can still take as many classes as you want in music, and perhaps maybe you're not interested in that history class, and that's a requirement. So this enables you to take art history class somewhere else, or a German class. So I think it depends on the student, but certainly we see many students who successfully do double major or a major and a minor. We've only had the minor at Pomona for half a dozen years, but I think it's been a popular addition option.
Liz in Castro Valley, California has a question for us. Hi, Liz.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. My question is, what is the level of academic counseling that incoming freshmen receive?
Sure, fair enough.
Oh, well, that's an easy one. It's intense. And it happens in two different directions. Obviously, the faculty are deeply engaged. Every student will have a faculty advisor. And it's a small group of students who work with each faculty advisor, so maybe 6 to 8, something in that neighborhood, which allows for a very close monitoring because it's not 20 for the faculty to keep tabs on. And it's a way by which the academic life is also woven into the social life, which is really crucial, we feel, so that students have peer group, in effect, already set up for them in terms of their advisor. But the second piece is no less important. What students learn very, very quickly, because they're on a particular floor in a hall, but they have an RA, for example, and they also are in what we call sponsor groups, which are somewhat larger groups than the faculty advising sessions. But what goes on in those sponsor groups is partly academic advising, and so students very quickly understand that when they come to college, they are active agents in their own education. They are really now framing what it is that they wish to study and the sort of sequentialing of that study. But you need advice to do that. And so one set of advice comes from the faculty, but there's another set of advice that comes from students. And students become very, very savvy about how to figure out their way through the curriculum of whatever major they ultimately will decide to do. And part of their savviness is framed around what other students have experienced and what they've heard. And it strikes me that that's a really wonderful model so that helps students gain control over their own educational experience, which in the end is what we want. That makes them active learners across the rest of their lifetime because of the sort of freedom of movement that we give them, and also the maturation that comes from them applying that freedom of movement. So I think it's a really wonderful model that is sustaining and supportive and nurturing on the one hand, but also nudging on the other, which is to say, you really have to start to make these decisions on your own. You've been in high school where, by and large, students are told from the day they walk in to the day they graduate exactly what they're going to do and in exactly what order. And college disrupts that pattern rightly and effectively. But we don't sort of say, jump in the pool and swim. We've got other people in the pool with you. And that again, is the faculty-student relationship. But also the older students are serving a really crucial and integrative part of this educational transformation. And I would say that one of the things that's most striking to me is when I work with this small group of students in September, late August, early September, they know nothing. When they come back to register for the spring semester, they know everything. And I don't know how that happens in 3 months, but the learning curve is tremendously steep. They climb it very quickly. And honestly, you won't recognize your child when they come home for Thanksgiving, if that's what they do. They have gone through an extraordinary experience in those 3 months, and they have learned things about themselves that they surely never thought they would learn. But that makes them much more mature, much more self-confident, and much more themselves, and that's a really cool experience.
Would you like to add anything, Professor Lee, about advising first-year students?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. Us, the faculty, like to think that we advise our students, and we certainly do. We spend a lot of time, especially in the initial weekend, at least 2 half-hour sessions. I remember with each advisee going over the curriculum, and so like Char said, we're very hands-on, but they also get a lot of advice from their peers. And when they're in these sponsor groups, they're placed in these small groups, and there are 2 sponsors per, I think, about 15 students, and there's usually one male, one female, and these sponsors are sophomores, so they're fresh from finishing their first year successfully. And I think that first-year students get a lot of advice from their sponsors, and they bond quite a bit, with these people.
Great. Carol in Washington, D.C. has a question for us, I think. Hi, Carol. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi.
My question is related to the consortium and how the students at Pomona interact with kids at the other universities. Do they take classes at any of the other campuses? Do the faculty do joint research with other faculty at the other campuses? I'm just trying to understand that relationship.
Oh, it's a wacky relationship, but it's a great one. And I would say that the consortium works infinitely better now than when I was a student here in the 1970s. Back then it was very rare, although I did it, is to take classes everywhere. Now students are moving across this landscape on the longboards, bicycles, and whatever. taking classes all over the place. And one of the things that's been so striking to me is when I have my students introduce themselves every class, the opening class each day of each semester, almost none of them identifies themselves by the schools they attend. I mean, I know who they are because I have their emails. But their conception is that Claremont is this very fluid landscape, and although they go to Harvey Mudd, or they go to Pitzer, or they go to Pomona Scripps or CMC, in some sense they're also a Claremonter, and that's a very different approach. I mean, it's actually what the founders of this consortium wanted to have happen, and I think only in the last 8 to 10 years or so that actually really played out, and I think in very exciting ways. It's wonderful to have the mix of students in my classes because they come at issues in ways that are different from their peers, and I think that's a really, really healthy thing.
I think the consortium really works best for the students. They can take classes anywhere. The schedule is designed so that it makes it very easy for students to take courses on any campus. I think faculty don't take advantage of the consortium as much because we get sort of caught up in our own, day-to-day life and our own departments and research. But there's certainly plenty of opportunities to collaborate with people across the colleges. But the students, I think, really do take advantage of the different strengths, of the different colleges. And they can also, for example, I have one student who's taking advantage of a new, what's called study abroad program from CMC that enables them to do basically an internship in Silicon Valley and be taking courses on the weekend. I think a CMC professor is flown up every weekend, so they have classes on Saturday, but then during the week they're working, sort of real life experience in an internship. And this is a Pomona student taking advantage, and she's actually a foreign student taking advantage of a program through CMC, Claremont McKenna.
Great. Tom in Philadelphia has a question for us. Hi, Tom.
Oh, hi. Thanks for doing this. It's helpful for those of us who are far away, especially. I just want to ask about demographics. About what proportion of the students would you say are from California? How many from out of state, and how many international?
Sure, fair enough. I'll take this one at least. I think I've probably got a pretty good grasp on this. Just over about 30% of our students come from California, which the last time we looked at this made us, believe it or not, the least California school. But we're about 30% coming from California. As to international students, it's about 9% now of the total student population is from our foreign passport holders. They'll come from the biggest is China, but then they come from something like 26 countries now worldwide. Let's see. It looks like. Lost my little thing there. It looks like Lisa has a question for us. Lisa in Corning, New York. Lisa, are you there?
Yes, hi. I wanted to know about the proportion of students in, let's say, one of the sciences like chemistry. What proportion of students who graduate go on to for their PhD as compared to a professional school like medical school or industry?
Thank you.
I can't give you the exact number, but I think you've actually picked the three things that many chemistry majors do, whether it's medical school, a PhD program, and or working for industry. I mean, those are sort of the three venues that they go through. But I can't. I wish I could give you a better feel for that. My sense is that there is a very healthy proportion of the chemists who go on ultimately to graduate school in chemistry, though the pattern is becoming interesting across the campuses in which, and this is true across the liberal arts, which is that students don't tend to go immediately. What they want to do is work in a lab somewhere. I've got a student who's currently working at Caltech, who I had a lot of classes, although he was a chemistry major, and is at Caltech working in a lab. Did that for 2 years, got a bunch of publications out, and now is going off to medical school. So they're doing these very interesting sort of sidestepping, or what might seem like sidestepping, but what they're really trying to do is to figure out within the professional venue that they've been trained in chemistry, what venue works best for them, whether it's research or medicine or medical research or ultimately into industry. Overall, the numbers of students who go to graduate school at Pomona probably tops 70%. within 5 years of graduation. And to be honest, I've only been here 5 years, and so I've only got that anecdotal batch for you. But every single one of our students goes to graduate school within 5 years.
Yeah, the general figure that we've given out is usually about a quarter of every year's senior class will go on to some sort of graduate level program, and then probably 70 to 75 to 80% will go on to graduate level work at some point within 5 years after leaving. It looks like, and I apologize, I may butcher the name here, and I apologize for that. Chaitanya in San Diego, California.
Yes, hi. My son is not quite sure about his major. I was wondering when he would have to declare a major.
Good. And I'm going to broaden that to not only when will he declare a major, but what's sort of the process by which students find their way into majors here, if you don't mind, perhaps Professor Lee?
Well, the ultimate deadline for a student is the end of their sophomore year to decide on a major. Many students come in thinking they're going to, major in something, but I can't remember what the percentage is, but I think most students actually change their mind
Right, that's right.
from what their initial interest, major is, and then what they actually end up doing. So it's a real testament, I think, to sort of the atmosphere of Pomona, which makes it good for students to kind of explore a lot of different things. And some students, they're very, very determined, and they know from day one what they're going to do. Most of others, the ones I see, are usually interested in too many things, and so when we're trying to advise them, we're trying to sort of narrow down, what you want to take, and what kinds of things are realistic to explore. Maybe just your first semester, because when you come in as a freshman, your schedule is a little bit more locked in that first semester because you're taking an interdisciplinary seminar, and then sometimes they're trying to get other requirements out of the way or their languages. But it's a very gradual process. Maybe Char wants to talk a little bit more about how students come up with.
Let me reinforce Genevieve's point and use an anecdote about my own son when he was at Pomona. He swore that two things would happen, one of which is that he would either become a chemist or a computer scientist, and the other of which he would never, ever become like his father, an historian. And so that worked for about a semester, and then he took a history class with one of my colleagues here, Ken Wolfe, a classicist historian, Mediterranean scholar, and Ben completely fell in love with the topic and with Ken Wolfe, and sort of had to call me chastenedly and say, well, I'm actually going to become a history major. And I think what Genevieve is pointing out, and what this anecdote at least partly represents, is that whatever the students' ambitions are, often they get sculpted in a way because they enter a class that they didn't anticipate, would be the class that really turned them on and excited them beyond measure. But it happens all of the time, and it is so exciting to watch those light bulbs go off. And what our job is as faculty is to sort of watch the light bulb go off and sort of test it. Is this really the wattage? Is this really the thing that you want? And to ask those questions of why. And so every time a student walks into my office and says they want to be an environmental analysis major, my first question to them is why? Not welcome, but why? Because I want to know what they're thinking about when they make that claim. Because I think they need to be able to articulate what it is that they expect to get out of this process and what it is that they want to pursue their life to be. And if they've got a good sense of that, then we have this wonderful conversation. And if they're sort of fumbling around, then it's a conversation that we need to have about, well, that's a great notion, and we'd love to have you as a major. But really, what you're saying to me is that there are other things that you also want to address, and maybe that's where you should go. So I think the questions over those 2-year period, that as Genevieve said, by the end of sophomore year, every student has got this figured out well, I think, or most every one of them does. And I think our job as faculty is to listen very, very carefully, to push back occasionally, to test how deep their commitment is, and then to help them understand what the next steps are and how to go about doing what they need to do to become a math major, to become a bio major, to become a major in history or English or any one of the arts.
Excellent. Jeffrey in Orchard Park, New York, has a question for us. Hi, Jeffrey.
Hi. A couple questions about study abroad programs.
Sure.
Roughly what percentage of the students do that? Second, does the time that you're over there, wherever it is, generally count towards class credit? And then finally, what does the school do to sponsor or encourage the program?
Fair enough. As to the number that go abroad, it's something like 55 to 60% of Pomona students will go abroad at some point during their academic careers here. I don't know if either one of our professors or faculty members here wants to jump in on the experience.
Yeah, the study abroad program at Pomona, I think, is one of the highlights. I think students come here often knowing that they do want to study abroad, and there are many, many opportunities. And yes, courses taken abroad can be counted towards the major and counted towards graduation. Some students choose to do a program that's not part of the Pomona program, and they have to jump through a few hoops, but they usually find it very gratifying. Some of the one-year programs are like that. I think that most students come back from the study abroad program, quite changed. They've been outside the bubble, and they also come back, appreciating, I think, a lot of what they have at Pomona and sort of taking advantage of it in their remaining, 2 or 3 semesters.
Let me add just one piece, which is the programs that Pomona supports. The college does a really good job of vetting these programs. It's been striking to me how, I've been asked multiple times to go to those programs, many of which my program is involved in, to evaluate the program itself and to evaluate our students' experiences, and that's an ongoing process. And so this place takes the experience seriously. We incentivize it, certainly in many of the fields that I'm connected with across this campus. Everybody wants students to go abroad. And in the EA program, frankly, we lose almost all of our juniors because at some point during their junior year, they're gone. And we encourage that mightily because we really think that if you're going to study environmental problems, if you're going to study anything globally, you need to get out into the world. But the best thing in some ways is that the college thinks of this as so significant that it evaluates every single program almost on an annual basis. And so what we say is a really good program. It turns out there are a lot of voices and a lot of eyes that have been on that program arguing that it's a good program, and I think that's that gives me a lot of confidence in terms of what the students are getting, which is why, in effect, we give credit for so many classes that come back from students who've been overseas.
And one point I'll add to the discussion as well about studying abroad is the financial aid piece, that a student's financial aid award will go with them if they go abroad, and so I think it's certainly one way that the college will incentivize those opportunities to get abroad as well. Karen in Sherman Oaks, California, has a question for us. Hi, Karen.
Hi. Actually, I think an earlier caller kind of covered my question. It was about how the consortium works and taking classes within the consortium. So just for clarity, though, all of the schools are on the same schedule, so adds and drops and changes and things are seamless. And I think I heard you say that that students at Pomona can take advantage of internships through the other colleges. Was that what I heard?
That is what you heard. And yes, the whole schedules are synchronized, and so from vacations to add drop to first day of classes it's all the same. And so the consortium functions like a 5,000 student undergraduate university. And that makes the planning process really quite simple. And for those programs that are 5 college-wide, and music is one of those in which there are kids who are coming because it's one of the few programs in Claremont that has music, one of the few colleges. We get students from all over the place taking our classes, and those classrooms, all these classrooms seem pretty equal, I think, in that regard. And Pomona students are real lucky, I think, to have this consortium. So each of those colleges are small, but they have the advantage of having the others nestled right next to them, and I mean literally their property lines abut all over the place. And so the movement across here is great, but I also think the intellectual energy that's generated by this is really one of the most attractive things for students and faculty in Claremont. And
looks like Timothy in Concord, California has a question for us. Hi, Timothy. Hi. Thank you. We understand that Pomona is a strong academic school, and that's one of the primary attractions, but we also advocate living a balanced life. So what do students do for fun? What do students do for fun? I am going to throw that question to our professors and see if they, our faculty members can.
We would know. I think one of the things that I most admire about our students is they work hard and they play hard. They really have a deep appreciation, and again, I'm working with a particular subset, but they have a deep appreciation for what really makes Southern California kind of remarkable is the capacity to move, and I'm getting academic, but the capacity to move between ecosystems at almost a blink of an eye. You can be on the 10,000-foot Mount Baldy to our immediate north and skiing, and then fairly quickly be down in Laguna Beach or Newport and surfing. And in fact, the students have a kind of surf day, snow and surf day, where the whole point is to do both of those things within about a 6-hour period. And so I think they're as rigorously pursuing the sort of the physical life, the life of the world, as much as they are, I think, really quite gifted academically. And, Los Angeles is not that far away. There is a nice train that runs between Claremont and L.A., and you beat the traffic and sort of wave to people in the car jams, traffic jam, as you go speeding by. So they have capacity to get into Los Angeles, to move out to the desert, to go out to Zion National Park, which they do on weekends. It sounds crazy to me, but that's what they do, because they like to rock climb or boulder jump or whatever it is they're up to. And so, they're not locked in these dorms studying all the time.
And Jennifer in Wells, Maine, I believe, has a question for us. Hi, Jennifer. How are you?
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you for being
from
patient.
Maine, I'm thinking of long-distance students who may not be able to come home every break, and I'm wondering what is campus like during Thanksgiving and spring break specifically?
Sure, a good question. I will answer at least one of these by saying that I know that during Thanksgiving every year, our Dean of Students here, Dean Feldblum, has an annual sort of Thanksgiving feast for all the students who are still on campus at her house nearby, just as a way to sort of provide a bit of a family experience for students who, as you know, sometimes can't get all the way back home for the different breaks here. But if either of our faculty would jump in,
I think that's. And faculty take students in also.
Yep.
I mean, it's sort of a joy to do that. It boosts my family because my kids are all grown and gone, and it's a lovely, it's a gesture, but it's also a joyful thing, I think. Spring break, which is interesting, is because it's longer. We also have alternative spring breaks and various programs and the like that are set up for students to go work in LA or to go up to do Habitat for Humanity in some place. Or to go, out to Sequoia National Park or wherever it is they want to go hiking. And students run those programs. They organize them. They get the funding for them. And it's, again, this part of this very proactive process where students are really taking on the responsibilities that, is really kind of striking. So I think your child, whether she or he comes to here, you should know, first of all, there's a lot of maniacs here. Obviously not as many as in Maine itself, but there are kids from Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, and they don't go home, and they're off hiking or wherever they are, and it's a wonderful way by which they get to see the rest of the world. And as someone who came here from Connecticut, I was knocked out, and I remember swimming in the Pacific in February. Called my mother up and said, "Why would I ever come home? I mean, you get to do this kind of stuff in February? I'd never experienced such a thing." So it's kind of a remarkable experience, and I think eye-opening in really great ways.
And there's definitely a community of students who are around during break, and not just students who are from the East Coast, but I have students who are from even the Washington State area who can't go home or don't go home, and they stick together. There's always a dining hall that's also open in the consortium. I think a couple actually. And so it's not as if the students are abandoned to empty dorms, and they always find, I think, things to do, or else sometimes they enjoy also just being a little bit sort of away from all the socializing and sort of just holing up in their rooms, chilling out. Exactly.
Excellent. Tom, and I may mess this one up too, Matameti, Minnesota. Tom, are you there?
Hi. I have first a question for the environmental analysis professor.
Yeah.
What sort of studies does the environmental analysis program entail? And also, as a general question, is there an option as either a minor or just as an art study to do creative writing?
I can answer the last one first. Yes, there is a creative writing program, actually. Jonathan Lethem, a brilliant novelist, runs that program. And so students are taking those classes a lot. And, there's other creative writers across the 5 colleges. And so I don't know if there's a minor. I don't quite know that piece of it. But I know lots of students are doing it, much like music, I think. I don't know that there are a lot of majors in creative writing, but there are a lot of students who take those classes across the 5 colleges and the like. And environmental analysis is a broadly interdisciplinary program that covers the sciences, social sciences, and humanities, and students have to take classes in each of those sort of broadly defined fields. And so there are core introductory classes at that level, and then at the end part of it, in their senior year, as I mentioned earlier, they have 2 capstone experiences, one of which is writing a thesis, their individual research project, and the second in the spring of their senior year, they're working on group projects with real-world clients. And, the purpose of the program really is to help students better understand their place in this world, in a physical sense, but also in an intellectual sense. And so we have students who are working on what we call environmental justice issues, that is the disproportionate burden that the poor and the less privileged bear from environmental problems such as toxic waste or fouled waters or dirty air. We have students who are doing environmental biology, which is basically conservation biology. We have students who are working in chemistry and geology, but we also then have kids who are doing more social justice kinds of work, which one classically would associate perhaps with sociology and or politics. They've managed to finesse and build it in that direction. And as Genevieve said early on, we have this really remarkable Mellon Environmental Arts Initiative on this campus, which is a merging of the art program with the EA program in terms of summer research and other kinds of events on campus that has really, I think, changed the way the dialogue about arts on this campus. This is one of the ways by which we've started to do that, and that it's framed around environmental issues or the environment as a location for creative work has been really profoundly changing for me, for someone who loves that stuff but doesn't do it a lot. It's been really great, and I think it's been a dynamic thing for our students.
And one more question here. Marco in Queen Creek, Arizona has a question. Marco, are you there?
Hello there. Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. My son has on his short list Pomona College and Brown University, and he would like to study math and physics. In addition to all the things that we've heard here on this call, could you mention some other things that might help him with this decision?
Sure, fair enough. And if I may, since this is, I think, going to be our last question of the evening, I'm going to say if I could just broaden this for our 2 faculty members to sort of say, I know that your son and I imagine most of the sons and daughters for whom all of you are the parents, are going to have your students are going to have a lot of great choices and a lot of hard decisions to make over the next couple of weeks. So I'm actually going to broaden this a bit and say, when you're, for students who are choosing between a place like Pomona and a place like Brown or like any of these other great institutions out there, what are perhaps some reasons to choose a place like this?
Well, I think I should say that I think my colleagues here at Pomona are just as good in their research area as in other research universities. They're out there publishing, performing, out there, having very active careers. And so I think that sort of levels the playing field a bit. But what you'll find here at Pomona really is the small classroom, the attention to each student. I think that's really kind of has been our theme, I think, all evening. And whether you're choosing to major in math and physics or English, I think you're just going to find a fit here that's going to be different than at a larger institution.
And to particularly talk to Brown, although I think one can do it in a lot of ways, I think one of the things that every student has to figure out for her or himself is really the fit and how they see themselves in relationship to the community that they're going to be joining, which is why it's absolutely essential to go visit these campuses, whether it's in the East, West Coast, or wherever it may be. I mean, that's the real register for many kids. What we know we do really, really well, which is, again, as Genevieve said, the teaching part of our work, which is not to, diminish other pieces of our careers, but the teaching part is really the driving engine of this campus. The classroom work is at the heart of everything that we think about and do, and it's a truism, but I think it's also true in this sense, which is that from the faculty's point of view, what we do in class feeds into our scholarship, and our scholarship feeds into our classrooms. And I think that's the hallmark of a really good, very, very strong education. I would say, without dissing places like Brown and the like, that we do retail, we do face-to-face work with our students very carefully. At larger institutions, that's less true. Which I discovered when I went to Johns Hopkins for my graduate work after having been in Claremont, where the faculty were there, and that's not a large university. The faculty were there to be famous, and their students came maybe third on the list of things they were doing. And I think that's, from my mind, why I am such a strong advocate of the liberal arts in places like Pomona, and God knows there's a lot of schools that are really good, is that their commitment is to their students. And we're really good, as Genevieve said, as scholars. There's no question about that. But that's not what I think about the first thing I wake up in the morning.
Fair enough. Just one quick note before we all say goodbye here is that if you have additional questions, if you had a question we didn't get to this evening, or have questions for us now after having listened in for an hour, you're welcome to stay on the line after the call ends, and you'll actually have a chance to leave us a voicemail. Someone from the admissions office will get back to you about that. I just want to thank all of you for joining us this evening, all of the parents out there, and I believe a couple of students as well for joining us this evening. I hope that we'll get to see all of you at one of our admissions days coming up this month, either the 15th or the 22nd. If you need anything else at all, do not hesitate to be in touch with our office as well. We're happy to provide any information you may want. And, of course, I do want to thank Professor Char Miller and Professor Genevieve Lee for joining us this evening and for offering their tremendous insights into life at the college. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I hope you all have a wonderful night. And, again, if there's anything the admissions office can do for you, do not hesitate to be in touch with us. Thank you. Good night.